Hi, I'm Jian-Hong. I'm going to share how to debug the Godot 4 game on the Android device. Here's a simple Godot game, and let's play it. Okay, it's a rigid body 2D falling down onto the static body 2D. Simple. We are trying to debug it on our Android devices. Um, actually, we can go to the Godot document. It has exporting for Android document. It says you need to install the OpenJDK version 17 right now, and it also installed the Android SDK. We can get the Android SDK by using the Android Studio. It will download the Android SDK by the manager. So um, here's the Android Studio, and we need the Android SDK. So let's go to the SDK manager. Here it is. I have already the Android SDK platforms. Here it is Android 14, and the SDK tools, Android SDK platform tools. Here it is. So cool. And normally, the Android SDK will be downloaded to your home directly at Android SDK path. Here it is. Yes, here it is. Cool. And I'm using a Linux distro on my laptop, so I install the Android SDK via the Flatpak. I can show you. It is it. Here it is. com.google.android studio. Android Studio, and I also install the Godot engine, of course. Here it is. Godot engine, and here's the Flatpak app information of the Android Studio. Cool. And also the Flatpak info org.godot engine and Godot. Here it is. And the Godot engine using the org.desktop.sdk runtime with the version 2408. Cool. Here's one of the key information we are going to use it later. Okay. Now let's go back to the export for Android document. To do that, we have to set up the corresponding environment in the Godot. So we have to enter editor settings screen to do some settings. Let's go to the Godot's editor settings. Here it is. And because we are going to export to the Android device, so it needs the Java SDK path. Godot will try to find the SDK at the path user lib SDK OpenJDK 17 and JVM OpenJDK-17. So let's check can our Godot engine locate that path. So here, Flatpak run -- command, use the ls and or .godot engine .godot and -l is the files or directory under the path user lib SDK OpenJDK JVM OpenJDK-17. Yes, we have it, and it's a link. So let's go back to the upper folder. Yes, the OpenJDK-17 links to the OpenJDK.0.13. Cool. Now, so our Godot engine can see the OpenJDK path. It is, and then it needs the Android SDK path. So, as we said, it is at your home directory and Android SDK. Here it is. So copy the path to Android SDK path. Okay, now we have set the editor settings. And then now we go to the project. Oh, by the way, because I'm going to deploy this game on the Android devices, so usually it depends on your game design. But for this one, the orientation is orientation. Rendering or display. Oh yeah, orientation. I set it as a portrait. Cool. And the other thing is the viewport. Viewport. I set the viewport width as 720 pixels, and the height is 1000. Just like looks like an Android app. So according to your app's design, so you can set by yourself. Cool. And then I click the project export, add the Android as a target. Now it shows some warnings. The first thing is the target platform requires etc2/ASTC texture compression. So let's enable it. Project settings, etc2 is the textures. Import etc2ASTC. It is the texture importer will import the VRAM compressed textures using the Ericsson texture compression to algorithm or lower quality textures and normal maps and adaptable scalable texture compression algorithm. Blah 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 blah. Long text. You just click it on, and it says these settings will be applied to the editor after restarting. So save and restart. Okay, restart it. And then back to the project, export again, Android, and it says invalid Android SDK path in editor settings missing platform tools directly. Interesting. So let's go back to the editor settings again, and the Android. Maybe I should follow the path here, type the full path instead of the home environment variable. So use the home, my username, and Android SDK path. Cool, close. And back to the project export again. And the Android. Cool. Now, no warnings. Because in the past, the Android package used to be APK format. However, right now, Google Android suggested the AAB format right now, so export it as an AAB format, and it says export AAB is only valid when use the Gradle build is enabled. So let's use Gradle build, enable it, and we also set the export path here. Oh, here's my Godot game home directory, the Godot test Android. and choose the AAB format, and let's call it simple demo. Cool, save. And then it says the Android build template not installed in the project. So we have installed it from project menu. Okay, let's go to the project and install Android build template here. It says this will set up your project for Gradle Android builds by installing source template to Android build. Okay, and let's install it. Cool, installed. And then let's go to the export again. Oh, looks like we can export this game. Right now, and before that, we have to set the unique name here. It usually be your organization's reverse DNS, and then the app's name, and let's call it simple demo. Game name. Let's make it default if blank. Okay, cool. We can export again. Choose an export mode. Debug. So start Gradle demo configuring. Yeah, here's some exporting information here on the screen. Okay, exported. And then we can check our game directly. Here's the Android folder. It's build Android folder. Do we have the build? Yes, we have the build. Output. Bundle. Debug. Yes, okay. Now be clear. There is the folder. Now we have a build debug.aab. It is the Android new format package, and we can deploy it on your Android devices. However, before that, actually, the Godot Engine's IDE has a remote debug feature. Here it is. To use it, we have to wire up our Android devices to our development host, for example, my laptop. And we have to enable the developer options on your Android devices. Here's the Android developer documents. Here's the document configure on device developer options. How to enable developer options? My phone is Google Pixel, so I go to the settings about phone and the build number. I have to tap the build number 7 times here. Yes, 7 times. Until see the message you are now a developer. And then this enable the developer options on my device. Okay, cool. If you are using other brands Android phone or devices, you can check out here. Cool. Back to here. And of course, after you wire up between your Android devices and your developer computer, so you have to make sure the make sure your Android devices accept or allow the debugging between your computer and your Android devices. Here's the screen copy. Yeah, I use the screen copy tool to show up my Android phone here, and then I can use this Godot's remote bug. Godot remote bug. And it shows no main thing has ever been defined. Selected one. You can change it later in project settings under the action category. And of course, let's go to set the main thing. It's an application and a run and the main thing. Let's choose the main thing. Yes, here's the main thing. And close. And then remote bug again. To target my Google Pixel 6 Pro. Okay. Now, okay. Oh, cool. Now you see my Google Pixel shows this simple game and the rigid body falling down to the static body 2D. Cool. That's it.